magic in the air. בכל הגוף בוער. Feel the magic in the air. Au revoir danser. Au revoir. Allez. Feel the magic in the air. בכל הגוף בוער.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the latest installment of the Planet Soccer World Cup Group Previews. I'm your host, Reed Simpson, along with my co-host, Dylan. You know us hopefully by now. Obviously, if this is your first time to the channel, you don't. Like I said, I'm Reed. That's Dylan, and today we are talking Group F. Maybe on the surface level, not the sexiest group in the world. I really like the group, though. I think as far as like country names, like brands, it's not like to the casual fan, oh, Spain, Germany, Brazil. But it's a really, really good group from top to bottom. I would argue it's probably the second best overall group. As far as, you've got Belgium at the top, who's we know Belgium, obviously.
Number one in the world until, 5 months ago?
Few months ago, yeah. And then Morocco's a really salty fourth team, honestly. They could give you trouble potentially, and they have at least one truly world-class player. Dylan, so Belgium, Canada, Morocco, and then obviously the 2018 runners-up, maybe some might call them the Cinderella of that tournament, Croatia. If you know soccer, you know the names Croatia has. It wasn't that big of a surprise once you really think about it. But you just don't expect Croatia to make the final, which they did in 18, obviously losing to France. What sticks out to you about this group? I have something in my mind, but I want to hear what sticks out to you.
Yeah, I think the first thing that sticks out to me is, you already somewhat touched on it, is the depth. I think you pretty much said Morocco is the fourth team, but technically they're the pot three team here, and Canada is ranking wise.
That's wild.
I think Canada's the fourth best pot four team. But I think a lot of that is not necessarily fair. I think a lot of that, the way the FIFA rankings work is somewhat recency bias, somewhat history based, and there is zero history on Canada's side.
With a sprinkle of corruption mixed in there.
If you haven't listen to our Group A preview, because I went all in to the corruption on FIFA World Rankings and how Qatar is, in my opinion, not the 51st best team in the world. But encourage you to go listen to that one. For right now, for this group, I do think that Canada's ranking isn't quite indicative of the talent they have. They have one of the best fullbacks in the world in Alphonso Davies. So I do think, like you said, it is a very, Belgium is very clearly the front runner of this group. But as far as the second team to qualify, I think a lot of people on the surface, because Croatia did finish runner-up in 18, it is the most attractive, safest second pick. But looking at it, I wouldn't be stunned. I would be surprised, but I wouldn't be completely stunned if Canada or Morocco were able to qualify, because they are two teams that have been playing really good as of late. Canada certainly has some very high-end talent on that roster, and Morocco is just a very well-rounded team. So I do think, while this probably isn't labeled the group of death because Croatia isn't that sexy, if you will, number two team in the group, let's be honest, they did make the finals in 18. So I think it is kind of a bit of a slept-on group as far as depth goes, with Belgium remaining the clear favorite once again. I feel like I've said that on many of these. Obviously, there will be probably 2 to 3 groups where the favorite does not finish in first.
There always is.
For me,
this can predict whatever. But
for me, this probably isn't one of those groups. If I had to pick 2 or 3 groups, this would not be at the top of my list, because Belgium is, for many reasons, a top 3 to 4 FIFA ranked team, and I think there's a lot of justification in that. So while I think it is a deep group, I don't think it's a deep group that will challenge first, but I think it is going to be a very entertaining group when it comes to that final match day on who's going to get that second qualification spot.
Yeah, I think for me, the big storylines in this group is you've got the front runners, Belgium and Croatia, it's kind of the expiration of their golden generation. And then on the flip side, for Canada especially, it's like the United States, it's the come up of their golden generation. So you've got these two conflicting character arcs, or life stages for these two nations. Obviously, Belgium will reload. Croatia will likely reload. We've seen the likes of Cody Gakpo and other youngsters coming up who will fill those voids left by those older guys. But and then obviously you've got Canada. You mentioned obviously Alphonso Davies. To go ahead. Yeah, I see you raising your hand.
Cody Gakpo is Dutch.
He's Netherlands. He's Netherlands. My bad.
Oh, stupid Americans! What are you going to do with us?
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm surprised that wasn't your mistake. Honestly,
normally I'm good for one episode.
Is Sesko Croatian? Who is? They got a young attacker. Will you look that up for me real fast?
They have the Lazio Napoli attacker. Do they not? Or forward?
No, he's Georgian.
Is he? Anyways.
To call Alphonso Davies just a fullback is, it's kind of a disservice to Alphonso Davies, because I think, especially in this Canada system, he plays such like a free roaming role. I believe Canada comes out in kind of a 3 at the back, 4 midfield, and they have Davies in that left mid, but it's very much a hybrid role. So they allow him to do a lot of creating, a lot of space creation and space execution. So it's an interesting group. Like we said, you've got two conflicting stages of these countries' life cycles, and Belgium and Croatia, and then Canada. So let's go ahead and start with Canada, the CONCACAF qualification winner. Cannot believe I said Cody. It almost makes me want to start this episode over because I said Cody Gakpo is Croatian. But anyways, Canada, it all starts with Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David to me. I think they're the X factors. If Jonathan David can score the goals and Alphonso Davies can progress the ball up the pitch, then Canada can advance out of this group. And they have very capable role players. They have very capable squad players. Their coach, like I said, he employs kind of that 3-4-1-2 formation. Davies is kind of a free role behind David. The system is dependent upon those two holding midfielders. So if they're at their best, then Canada's a tough team to beat. And we saw that in qualifying. Granted, they won't be able to play in Winnipeg in the snow and have that advantage over their opponents, like we see so often in CONCACAF, trying to take advantage of the elements. But there's a guy on TikTok that always shows up on my For You page who's just a fanatic Canada fan. And I know he's a troll, but it's like, he just says the most outlandish things. Like, truly, I think he expects Canada to win the World Cup. And they had a good run in CONCACAF qualifying, but CONCACAF is nothing to write home about this year. So Canada, I don't know what to expect out of Canada in this World Cup. What do you think, Dylan?
Yeah, no, like you said, I think it starts and maybe ends is a little strong, but certainly starts with Alphonso Davies. I've seen in the last, couple of weeks as we get closer, and there were some injury concerns around him. Canadian, being in Michigan, I'm not far off from Canadian media, so I've seen Canadian media.
Oh yeah, your neighbors.
I say this half laughing and half, I guess, serious because they're serious about it. But he's the Wayne Gretzky, the Gordie Howe, the Donovan Bailey, the once great track star,
LeBron James.
I mean, to like that is where they're comparing him. We make that joke regularly about Pulisic being the LeBron James of soccer, according to what's that?
Oh, I forgot about
Pawn
Buchanan.
Stars.
Also, they also have Buchanan.
They do have
That's
Buchanan
right.
as well. But for me, it really does start with Davies. He plays a fullback position, but truly, I think in his perfect position, he's more of an attacking midfielder. He's kind of a better defensive Trent Alexander-Arnold. He can
just a better all-around Trent Alexander-Arnold, honestly.
In my opinion, yes. There are people that will, on their last breath, say that Alphonso or TAA is the best progressive, forward-thinking fullback in the world. For me, I would much rather have Alphonso Davies on my side than Trent Alexander-Arnold, because while I say his natural position probably would be more of that attacking outside type midfield position, he is a very competent defender at the same time. I've seen
he's a freak athlete.
I've seen people like Rio Ferdinand and Lewandowski and Thomas Mueller say he's like one of the hardest players they've ever played against, whether it's in training or on the field. And to get that kind of recognition from those types of players is, I mean, the highest praise you can really get in world football right now. And it's very well deserved. It was a guy that, a week and a half ago he went down. Maybe it might have just been a week ago, but very recently went down with an injury, and there were questions about his ability to play in the World Cup. And without him, I think Canada would be in a world of hurt. But all signs point to him playing. He came out, I think today even, and said, I'll be 100% by World Cup. I'm starting full running and full training in the next day.
Seems like
day
today was the day for athletes to do that. I think Sonny did the same thing.
Yeah. Sonny came out and said he was playing. But if he is fully healthy, I think that is a completely different Canada side, obviously, as to a side without him. But in complement to him, they do have Jonathan David, who is one of the more exciting young forwards in world football right now. He's kind of, I don't want to say Alphonso Davies light when it comes to the excitement around him for Canadian soccer, because they do play a pretty different position, but like there is a ton of excitement around him. He's had a lot of success over in Europe so far, and he's going to be a guy that's leaned on heavily. And
they are far and away the most sought after, most expensive, most noteworthy players on Canada's roster.
Yeah, and it's really not even close. Like Tejan Buchanan is a really, really nice player. Spent a lot of time in the MLS for our you American listeners. He was at New England and is a very competent winger and will be on the world stage. But as far as true star power, it really comes down really to Davies and Jonathan David. I think they will go as far as those 2.5, if you will. The players will take them, and that's not really trying to discount the rest of that Canadian side. But I do think with the kind of formation they play, they do lean heavily on a 3-4-1-2. So it does allow Davies to kind of play more of that wing back type position, which does fit him a little bit better. I do think a lot of it will hone in on their ability to have success in this group. And I think both of them have the ability to match up well against a Morocco and a Croatia. Again, I do think Belgium is a heavy for all the right reasons favorite in this group, but I do think the talent that Davies and David bring to this Canadian side will make them at least a threat. I don't know if I'm quite ready, to say I think they can qualify above Croatia, just because, I mean, it's hard to discount a Croatia team that hasn't changed a whole lot. They've gotten older, but as far as the roster, hasn't had a ton of turnover since that 2018 finals appearance. But for me, Canada really does hinge on those two guys.
Yeah, to give you an idea of, and again, this isn't discounting the rest of Canada's squad, but if we're looking at transfer market value, you got Alphonso Davies, 70 million, Jonathan David, 45, and then Buchanan at 12 is the next. So there is a drop off, at least in the perception of these players in their reflection in the market value. So I think one thing definitely to note with Canada is I believe Maxime Crepeau, however you say his last name, Crepeau?
Yes.
Whatever. Their starting goalkeeper is out for this World Cup. He suffered a pretty nasty injury in that MLS Cup final. So I honestly don't know who. Let me see here. Dane St. Clair,
that is the most
Minnesota
Canadian.
United.
That is the most Canadian sounding goalkeeper name I can think of.
Dane St. Clair of Minnesota United. So if he wasn't Canadian, I would guess Minnesotan. So pretty proper that he plays for Minnesota.
To be fair, they do have other talent as well. Their central midfield, center defensive mid that is currently playing at Porto. I'm not even going to try and say his name because I will butcher it.
Eustáquio or Stefan Eustáquio.
He grew up in Portugal. As we've talked about in the past, many of these guys on these national teams are not lifers from the country, if you will, that they play for. But he was playing on the Portugal, like starting on the Portugal U21 team with Leao and Jota and Felix. So he is certainly a talent as well. There's no need to really discount some of the other guys. When I do say it hinges on Davies and Jonathan David, it is slightly discounting those other guys, but it's not like everything stops with them. There is other talent on this side that has played on high levels in European soccer that will have drastic impacts on this side and on this group.
For sure. I can't decide if I would like to see Canada be successful in this World Cup.
I would. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm so close to them and like I know Canadians like just from growing up or what it is. Right. But I think partially too as a U.S. fan, like we talked about this on one of our previous Premier League podcasts. In the Champions League, I root for the Premier League teams, and just like in college football, I'll root for the SEC and the Big Ten teams because the two teams I support play in those conferences. So I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, I will never be in that boat with Mexico. Like I just flat out won't because that's a true rival. Just like I will never, root for Michigan over anybody because I dislike Michigan as a Michigan State fan. And that's how I see Mexico. But I do see Canada kind of as like that Penn State, if you will, of CONCACAF, where like, I hope they do good. There are things that bother me about them, but overall their success does validate the success of my own team. So seeing a successful Canadian side that won the CONCACAF octagonal, if you will, of the qualifying, they did finish technically in first. It would be nice to see them have some success on the world stage for me.
Yep, sure. I'll echo that for you. Let's move on to Morocco. I would probably, I don't know what the sports books would say. That's your forte. I would probably say Canada probably has a better chance to advance than Morocco does, but Morocco does have some talent. It obviously, you don't think of a team's talent as starting with a fullback, although we just talked about a team whose talent starts essentially with a fullback, whatever Davies is. Morocco, it starts with Hakimi, the PSG right back, soon to be Tottenham Hotspur right back. Just kidding. Hopefully not, though. Hakim Ziyech. You've got guys on this squad that it's not a Morocco team that's like, oh, Morocco, there's no way they have players. Like if I was an ignorant soccer fan or an ignorant like World Cup watcher, I would not place any money on Morocco having any world-class players or close to world-class players. But they have some talent. They really do. They've got a plethora of European players. It's a decent squad. It really is. It resembles a European squad in many ways. It doesn't really seem like an AFCON squad. But other than Hakimi, I don't watch very many of these players. Obviously, I see Ziyech. He doesn't get a whole lot of minutes at Chelsea. I know he suffers with injuries, but he is probably one of their best midfielders when he's healthy and on form. And then Amrabat, obviously at defensive midfield, he's a very good number 6. He's a very good pivot. So Morocco is not a team to be taken lightly. Absolutely. If they were in Group B, I would probably say they might be favorites over us to get through, especially with the form they're on versus us right now. So you have any thoughts on Morocco, Dylan?
Yeah, I think Morocco is one of those teams that the sports books, they do have them as the third favorite. Like you said, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I would lean Canada over Morocco, but I think that would be some exposure bias on my part because I've just seen Canada play more. Morocco is certainly a team, like you said, that we don't watch a lot of. But as far as rankings go, I believe they are the second ranked AFCON team. At least going into qualification, I know they were just 3 or 4 spots, I believe, behind Senegal. So they are certainly a team that I don't think you can sleep on, but on the surface, they don't have that cachet, if you will, of even a Canada, which is crazy to say that about Canada, that they have more star power than the second best AFCON team, according to rankings. But I at the end of the day, I do think it will be hard for these first two teams we're talking about to qualify over Croatia and Belgium. It feels a little chalk for me to say that, but I'm just not ready to go out on a limb on either of these two sides and say they're ready to hang with a Croatia team that we time and time again tend to sleep on, and time and time again tend to prove us wrong, and did so in 18 by making the finals.
Yeah. One last thing to note about Morocco is their goalkeeper, who is Bono. Very, very good last year. He's in seriously bad form right now with Sevilla. I think he gave up, it says here,
to be fair, I don't know.
12 goals in 4 matches.
To be fair, I don't know what keeper would be in good form on Sevilla right now.
That's true.
So I will try and take that all with a grain of salt, because Sevilla.
Then confidence. Then I'll change form to confidence.
Sure. Right. So, because he has been forced to face a lot of shots, a lot of high quality opportunities, and not watching every single one of those Sevilla games, but following Champions League closely enough. I'm willing to go out on the limb to say that most of those were not his fault, and it was more of the buildup and the team around him that caused those scoring opportunities that he was unable to save. But certainly, I mean, he's not. Hate to bring it back to Newcastle, but he's not Nick Pope, who's on freaking 9 clean sheets this year. On November 10th, like he's just not that guy right now. And whether it's confidence or form, you can argue, but certainly he's a guy that they will be asked to do quite a bit against Belgium and against Croatia, I would imagine. And yeah, he certainly is not on top confidence. And in our U.S. team breakdown, we talked about confidence being kind of the most important thing for strikers. And I think you could argue that with goalkeepers too. There is a point where if you believe, as silly as that sounds, if you believe you'll stop this next shot, you're more likely to stop it. Where if you've let in 12 goals in the last 4 games, you have that doubt in the back of your mind. So that is an interesting wrinkle to it for Morocco.
Yeah, it is. I think the more I watch soccer, the more I realize that goals at the end of the day are rarely ever goalkeeper's fault. And that's something that
right. I mean, if you're Nick Pope, you're playing in front of the best front four or back four in all of England. So yeah, maybe Nick Pope isn't that good. Maybe it's all the defenders.
Definitely a combination of both. But yes, Newcastle's backline's been very impressive. Let's move on to Croatia, the 2018 runners-up. If Leeds is our soft spot in the Premier League, I think Croatia is my international soft spot. I love Luka Modric. He's my favorite non-Spurs player by a mile. I love his story. I love everything about his career path. Obviously, it didn't start at Tottenham, but he came through, and then he's obviously won 5 Champions Leagues with Real Madrid. So he is still probably their spark plug at 36 years old. They have a lot of guys north of 30 who are considered to be their rocks or their spark plugs or their engines, but not Josko Gvardiol, however you say his last name. Gvardiol. Yeah, Gvardiol. The 20-year-old center back from Leipzig. Is that right? Yep. Very talented young center back. And then you get into the Kovacic, Brozovic, Modric, all the itches, Perisic, the older guys who have been there, done that. So, Morocco. Croatia is a balanced team. They're a deep team, and they know what they are, and they know their system, and they're not going to beat themselves. And they just feel like a safe pick to get out of this group. What are your initial thoughts on Croatia before we get into the conversation on them?
This midfield is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
The depth in this midfield is disgusting. Like I just like we talked in our US roster selection breakdown about how good our midfield was, but man, this Croatian midfield. I mean, you have Kovacic, you have Brozovic, you have Perisic isn't quite a midfielder, but kind of plays that. He's a winger, but can play through the middle of the field. And the Modric's and the who's the guy that just played was at Chelsea and is now at Atlanta? His name's escaping me.
Pulisic.
Yeah.
Pasalic, I think.
Pasalic, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous how good this midfield is. And I think a midfield that good is going to be a struggle for a team again, I don't think the conversation is will they finish first. I think the conversation is more built around how confident are we that they can make it out of this group. And I think the midfield is really where we answer that question. I think this midfield is a midfield that will give Canada and Morocco both nightmares and fits for 90 plus minutes. They will be a very tough midfield to defend against, and a midfield, frankly, as much as I would like to have Canada be successful, a midfield I don't feel confident in putting a Canada over purely because of that midfield talent.
Yeah, I think the really the question with Croatia, and we talked about it with Spain and Germany, is who's that number 9? They don't really play a number 9. I don't think they play a 3 up top. I think it's kind of a 2. It's kind of a total football thing with Croatia. The midfield is so good. You want to get as many of those guys on the field, and they act as the goal scorers, but there's not that Cody Gakpo
if there was.
Yeah, if there was, then man, watch out. But you've really just got a lot of ball progressors in the midfield, and then obviously with Brozovic just being a bully there at the number 6. But I mean, they're going to dominate possession in most cases. They're going to control games for the most part, and I think they can limit themselves being hit on the counterattack, despite a lot of the age they have in the midfield, just because the intuition and the awareness of this midfield is
exactly
just going to be able to identify what Kevin De Bruyne is going to do. Like it's just the savvy that they're going to have. So the question for me is where are the who's going to score a brace when they need it in the round of the quarterfinals or whatever if they want to get back to that position. So, but yeah, the midfield is stupid, just stupid. So good for them.
And I think
I'd say top 4 midfield in this World Cup.
Oh, absolutely. And you touched on are there questions that it's aging? They have multiple players on the north side of 30. We
didn't even mention Vlasic either
because he's been not noteworthy. But for me, it's mainly about the midfield though, and we talk about the age being a little bit of a concern, but Luka Modric could be 44, and I would trust him to be in the right place at the right time to stop a counter. Don't
take this comparison the wrong way, but age to talent and kind of longevity wise, Tom Brady, pretty similar. To where we just think they're going to have that fall off year. It's coming. The fall off year is coming. It's coming, and
it just truly never does.
Yeah.
But I do think it is a warranted question about the scoring, because I do think they will dominate the midfield enough to qualify out of this group, but without any real goal scoring threat, because Vlahovic is not Croatian, he's Serbian.
Correct.
You are on a roll today. I had to double check that because I'm pretty sure he plays with Mitrovic.
I didn't say Vlahovic though.
Oh, I thought you did.
No, I said Vlasic.
Oh, Vlasic.
V-L-A-S. Yeah.
I thought you said Vlahovic. I'm pretty sure
Torino.
He's Serbian and plays with Mitrovic, which is
very
exciting.
I know that Serbian top 2 right there.
Very, very exciting, although Vlahovic hasn't done much. A very exciting top front 2 that we will discuss in a future episode. But I do think, if we're talking about their biggest scoring threat being, a guy on Torino, no offense, where we are in a spot where it's probably not the most formidable attack, but the midfield certainly has enough to get the job done in the group. And I think I keep coming back to the midfield without having a lot of other comments, but for me, that's where it starts and ends with this side. The midfield is too elite to, in my opinion, really have any questions about their ability to qualify. As far as I don't know offhand who they would match up with in the knockout stage if they do finish second. I can pull that up super quick, but I do think, as you said, it will kind of be a question: do they have the scoring depth to make a run? Because they will, I believe, they would face Group E.
You can look that up, and I'm going to say this one thing about Croatia: their top 2 scorers by far, out of all these guys they're going to have at the World Cup, are Modric and Perisic. Modric has 23 goals and 154 international caps, and Perisic has 32 and 115. Perisic plays on my club team, and I do not think of him as a goal scorer. And
No.
Modric is certainly not a goal
They're
scorer
both
on Madrid.
phenomenal facilitators, absolutely
and playmakers,
world-class facilitators. So it's almost the question is, are they going to facilitate enough to have a average international striker finish? And I think they will enough to get out of the group. Now, do I think they will enough to match up with whoever is runner-up in Group E, which is either Spain or Germany? Sorry, Nick, probably not. Japan, probably not. I wouldn't.
That's a tough.
But if they get Spain, there is experience on Croatia's side in the midfield, and both teams are talented midfield teams. So is that experience plus talent in Croatia enough? It could be, but because of that matchup in that first knockout stage of the round of 16, it's like I'm very far from being ready to project them into definitely not into a finals bid, but not even enough really into a semifinals. I think quarterfinals would be a phenomenal turnout for this side.
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it on Croatia. A really good team. They're going to be good again, but there are a few questions up top. So we'll see how far they can advance. I think both Dylan and I, like we just said, do see them getting out of this group. But there will be upsets, and Croatia could potentially be one of them if the age catches up to them, or if they can't score.
They could at the same time, they could very well snag a draw against Belgium and make the group interesting. I don't think they're going to win the group, but they could snag a draw against Belgium to make things interesting. I believe they have Belgium on the last match day, though, so that might make it less likely for them to disrupt the group with that being on the last match day. But as far as their likelihood of getting out, I think playing Canada and Morocco first is certainly advantageous for them.
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about Belgium. The FIFA just came out with kind of their World Cup preview articles, and the headline for Belgium is "Last Shot at Global Glory for Belgium's Golden Generation."
They are old.
While it's true, I think that might be a little bit harsh because Belgium is a good soccer country. We don't think of it that way, but they have produced historically good players. They haven't necessarily always performed on the international stage as a team. But here in our lifetime, at least, they've always been a very consistent showing at top levels of international football.
Yeah, I
truly think with this team, it starts with Kevin De Bruyne. Absolutely. In my very short history of watching this sport, he's been the best player that I've seen over the last year and a half. His instincts and his ability to just thread the needle and to score and to, top bins, free kick. I mean, it's just, he's a freak, and it's so impressive.
Yeah, I mean, we spent 10 minutes praising the Croatian midfield, and I think Kevin De Bruyne, independent of Axel Witsel or whoever else you want to talk about on this Belgian side, I think he far and away trumps Tielemans. Like, he far and away trumps. Well, and Tielemans is starting to perform better in the last couple of weeks. Tielemans 2 months ago was kind of an afterthought for me on this Belgian side because he was performing so poorly. But yeah, I think regardless of who you could put just about any other midfield pairing out of the whole World Cup with Kevin De Bruyne, and it would be a top 5 midfield in the World Cup.
Yeah,
and
I think
feel
it
very
will be interesting to see how Belgium sets up. They've got De Ketelaere, who kind of plays more of an attacking role. I think he's listed as an attacking midfielder, but I think he plays more of a number 9, advanced number 10, maybe a deep lying number 9. Obviously, you have Tielemans, like we mentioned, who's catching form like much of Leicester is right now in the Premier League. We talked about them. Let's talk about Thibaut Courtois because we said we started recording World Cup previews way back June, whatever, and we're like, maybe we should hold off and wait until closer to the World Cup. At that point, Thibaut Courtois was the best goalkeeper in the world on form. Absolutely won Real Madrid the Champions League. Still on form.
I was going to say.
Still absolutely unbelievable. He has not regressed whatsoever. I would say the same thing about him now that I would after the Champions League final. he can win this World Cup for Belgium.
Yep.
He can. A lot of times what it comes down to is a goalkeeper standing on their head to win the World Cup, and then some guys like a Kevin De Bruyne, whoever, De Ketelaere, Lukaku, banging in a couple goals, and that's how you win a World Cup sometimes. I don't think Belgium will win, but Thibaut Courtois is a World Cup winning goalie.
Yeah, I mean,
just having not won one.
He makes them a much more, if you will, attractive pick if you are looking for like a semi long shot. I want to say they're like plus 2,000 or something of that ilk right now to win. And I think that's a little bit disrespectful when you're talking about they have the best goalkeeper in the world and the best midfielder in the world. And yes, they might not have that star power that Argentina or Brazil or England have, but when you're talking about a knockout tournament, sometimes it does come down to who has the biggest talent discrepancy at the most important positions. And in my opinion, that is a ball progressing midfielder and a world-class goalkeeper, and they have both. So if you do want to take a flyer,
maybe the best in the world at both.
Yeah,
positions.
exactly. And so if you do want to take a flyer on a team outside the top like 5 or so for World Cup winners, I wouldn't hate it if somebody said, "Hey, I believe this Belgium team can beat Croatia." Like It's interesting that they're kind of in the same group, and I don't want to say that they are kind of. I think Belgium is much more favored going into this World Cup than Croatia. However, if you're looking at a team outside the top 5, which Belgium is, which Croatia was, I think they are probably the most likely team outside of the top 5 as far as betting or odds go to make the finals. And then, hey, once you get in the finals, you have the best goalkeeper in the world. We saw that happen at Real with Courtois. And
Liverpool dominated that game.
And
Courtois said, "Screw y'all, I'm taking this. We're winning it."
He just proved that he is the absolute best goalkeeper in the world, and like you said, he's still on that form. So I think anybody saying Belgium won't or could possibly even not win this group, I think would be foolish. I think they do have a very talented side in the most important positions.
Yeah, I think when you look up and down this Belgium team, also, they have some guys who maybe might not have been on people's radars as much, who have started to really catch fire and are legit starters in the World Cup. Trossard, it starts with him. That's who I think of when I think of this. He's carrying Brighton's attack right now, and a Brighton team that's in a European spot. So it's not just Kevin De Bruyne. It's not just Yannick Carrasco, Yuri Tielemans, Courtois. They've got these 21-year-old up-and-comers also, which is why I think it might be a little bit harsh to say the end of the run. Certainly it is the end of their golden generation. I don't know how great Kevin De Bruyne will be at 35. Luka Modric is pretty damn good at 35, 36.
If there's a guy who can, based on his skill set, it's going to be
yes.
De Bruyne. Same with Courtois.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if we're having the same conversation in 4 years in 2026 at the U.S. World Cup, that Belgium is once again in my opinion, a top 5 favorite. I would put them in my top 5 favorites right now because of that just ridiculously talented midfield and the best goalkeeper in the world. And that's something that you can say it is the golden generation because they do have some older guys like the Weitzel's and Courtois is 32, I think. So
Jan Vertonghen, who I think will still start at center back for them at 35. So
like there is, I understand why we're calling it possibly the end of their quote unquote golden generation. But as you said, there is a lot of young talent on this side too. And I think the Trossards could be guys who we see break onto the world stage, because that's somebody for your average listener who doesn't know anything about Brighton Hove Albion. Like you don't know who that is, even if you're a casual Premier League fan. If you're not playing like fantasy Premier League or Premier League nerds like us, that might not be a name you think of as being a formidable goal creating presence, but he has certainly been that in the best league in the world right now for a team that, as you said, does not have a lot of striking ability around him, and he's been able to produce goals. So there's a lot of wrinkles to this Belgian team that I think are going underlooked. I know when, like you said, we started these previews back in June, and I think I was a little bit lower on Belgium at that time than I am now. It was more Courtois and De Bruyne, but we have seen a lot of progression from that team since in their own domestic leagues.
Yeah, I think Eden Hazard, I'm pretty sure he'll be on this squad. I think he could be an X factor for Belgium. It's kind of like a Gareth Bale situation
If
with
he
Wales.
if he's fit enough and form
Yeah.
enough, because he hasn't been getting time, but
He's one of those guys. I feel like when he puts on the national shirt, it's just a little bit different, you know.
Absolutely, and we've seen up until
and then Lukaku also would be another. He's their goal scorer if he's on form, and he's always performed well with Belgium.
And up until recent transfers for both, outside Lukaku's newest transfer, but up until the last 2 to 3 years of transfers for both. I mean, until Hazard went to Real, he was one of the best attacking midfielders in the world. Like at Chelsea, he
could have gone down as Chelsea's all-time best player,
right? If he had stayed, and he went to Real, and it hasn't panned out for him. But there is still a lot of talent there at that position for him, and it's just another example of how good this midfield is. And just like I said, I think Croatia's midfield is too good to be threatened by Canada or by Morocco. I certainly feel the same about Belgium with Hazard and Tielemans and De Bruyne. Like top to bottom, it is a very, very well-rounded midfield that I just don't think some of those borderline teams that we want to succeed have shown some ability to have success on that international level. I just don't think they'll be able to hang with the likes of that midfield.
Yeah, absolutely. Last thing on Belgium, I think it's worth mentioning that the guys they're going to line up at center back and then their goalkeeper, they've played a lot of international games together. They have the chemistry. They know how to communicate. They're not going to make stupid mistakes, and they're going to be able to defend that net to a top-notch ability. So Belgium is definitely a team. Like you said, I'm much higher on Belgium today than I was on June 20th. So that they're going to be a team to not be messed with for sure.
Yeah, I think the biggest question long term for them, and likely part of the reason their odds are outside of that top five is, again, they would match up with Group E, so they'll match up with Spain or Germany, and having that as your knockout round match is certainly tough. But either matchup, I would favor Belgium, regardless of which one of those two they draw. I would favor Belgium there. But I do understand from that perspective why their odds to win it all might be a little bit longer than the talent should suggest. But a lot of that is likely because of that future matchup. But for me, while those future matchups would be challenging, there are matchups that I would still favor Belgium in.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't do a best 11 for this group. Did you?
I did not.
I think we covered it pretty much in depth. The midfields would be pretty much the whole team would be dominated by Belgium and Croatia outside of Davies, and I might even slot David in at that striker position.
Yeah, no, I do.
Lukaku.
Yeah, I do think there's an argument there that Canada does have the best fullback and the best. Well, if you want to call him that, and the best striker. But at the end of the day, I just don't think it's quite enough for Canada to get the job done as much as I would love to see them somehow finish ahead of Croatia.
Yeah. Any last thoughts on this group?
No, I hope Canada does well. Oh, Canada, maple syrup, Tim Hortons, Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David. I'm wishing you all the best. Find a way to knock out Croatia. Sorry, I know that's like your pseudo second international team, but I am certainly pulling for Canada to find a way out of this group, whether I think it's likely or not.
Sweet. Well, that's Group F, guys. We hope you feel more educated on this group now. Or like we said, a really good group from top to bottom. So I think we've got 2 left. We're going to get them done this weekend and next week. So pretty excited for this World Cup to get going, regardless of when it falls during the year. So thank you guys for listening. Like, subscribe, share, all that jazz. You'll have a fantastic night. Peace out from the Planet Soccer Podcast.
Cool.